never thought that an ordinary work morning could completely change the course of my life. My name is Lana Matthews. 6 months ago, I was just a faint shadow among the bustling crowd of Grand Vista Mall, a sales associate at Maison de Lumière, a luxury fashion boutique where everything sparkled except my paycheck and my future. At 27, I was living alone in a cramped apartment barely big enough to turn around in. My divorce had been finalized 3 months prior, leaving me empty-handed, burdened with debt from a broken marriage, and a slowly dimming dream to go back to school, start over, and find myself again. That Saturday morning began like any other. I arrived 30 minutes early to check the displays, steam out every crease from the dresses, and wipe every speck of dust from the glass. In luxury retail, appearances are everything. A crooked hanger or a wrinkled hem can make people judge your entire worth. I couldn't afford to lose this job, temporary or not. It was the last thing holding me steady. Outside, the mall began to fill. Families strolled hand in hand. Teenagers laughed near the food court. Elegantly dressed women floated past our storefront as if we were invisible. And I, standing behind the glass counter, smiled softly at each fleeting glance, unaware that just a few hours later, everything would shatter, only to be reborn in a way I never dared to imagine. She walked in like a cold gust of wind, no knock, no smile. Probably in her 50s, her platinum hair was styled to perfection. A cream-colored suit hugged her slim frame, and her heels clicked against the marble floor like each step carried authority. Her handbag alone was worth more than my monthly salary. "You," she said sharply, her voice like the edge of a blade. "I need assistance immediately. I have an important event tonight, and I need the perfect dress." I tilted my head slightly, keeping my professional smile intact. "Of course, ma'am. May I ask what kind of event you're attending? A corporate gala, or—" "It's my husband's company's formal evening," she cut me off, her eyes sweeping from head to toe, inspecting, judging. "I need something elegant, impressive, but not too loud, and it must be tasteful. I assume you know what tasteful means, don't you?" I gave a small nod, though something inside me sank. In 3 years working here, I'd met all kinds of customers, gentle, distant, difficult. But women like her, the kind who mistake kindness for weakness, were the ones who stayed with you the longest. Still, I kept smiling. "We've just received a few new designs perfect for formal occasions. Let me show you." I didn't know if I was trying to please her or simply preserve the last sliver of dignity I had as someone who serves quietly in a world of people who never glance at price tags. I led her to the evening wear section where our most exquisite gowns were displayed, carefully selected by season and trend. I presented each piece one by one, a soft burgundy dress with delicate beading, a sleek gray gown with asymmetrical lines, and a royal blue piece beloved for its photogenic quality. She picked them up like she was examining discount bins. A raised brow, a soft humph sharp enough to slice air. "Too plain," she said, dismissing the gray gown with a flick of her wrist. "This color washes me out," she remarked about the burgundy, "and the blue looks like something a secretary would wear to a birthday dinner." I swallowed hard, maintaining only a faint smile. In this job, you learn the difference between honest feedback and calculated contempt. She wasn't here to shop, she was here to dominate. "I'll grab a few pieces from the designer line that just arrived this morning," I said, keeping my voice even. For almost an hour, I darted back and forth between racks, folding, unfolding, listening, adjusting, only to be met with colder critiques each time. Too long, too short, too cheap-looking, no taste. As I poured all my attention into her, other customers came and went. I caught glimpses of my coworkers' eyes behind the register. They knew I was stuck. But I remained patient. Because in this world, when you're poor, kindness isn't a choice. It's the last shield you have left. And then, she turned to face me, eyes narrowed as if she had finally made up her mind. Not about the dress. About me. I said I didn't want anything flashy. Can't you listen? Her voice rose, slicing through the boutique like a thin blade. The air froze. A few customers turned their heads. I felt their eyes watchful, tense, waiting. I nodded slightly, my voice steady but quiet. I'm sorry if I've misunderstood. Maybe if you shared a bit more about the event space or setting, I could. She laughed. But it wasn't laughter. It was a cut. You think someone like you could understand my world? She stepped closer, her eyes drilling through my skin. Who are you? Just a shop girl in a second-rate mall. Look at what you're wearing. I instinctively glanced down. White blouse, gray pencil skirt, standard uniform. Professional. Neat. But under her gaze, it felt like I was wearing rags. Maybe I should ask my manager to assist you, I said, voice catching in my throat. Oh, now you're passing me off. Typical. This is exactly the kind of useless service I expected. I wanted to explain that I had tried, that I only wanted to help, but I never got the chance. Her hand struck my cheek. The sound echoed in the room like something breaking, something unrepairable. Silence. I stood frozen. My cheek burned, my lip bled. I raised my hand instinctively, not just to touch the pain, but to hold what was left of my dignity. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. That's what happens when you don't show respect to your betters, she said, like a lecture, not a threat. But what she didn't realize was that this slap would teach a far greater lesson, not to me, but to everyone around her. I stood still, hand against my cheek, the taste of blood beginning to rise. She stepped back slightly, exhaling, as if she had completed some noble correction. Her triumphant eyes scanned the room silently, expecting applause. But what she got was frozen silence. No one spoke. No one laughed. Only stares. And then a voice cut through the tension, deep, clear, unshakable. Touch my wife again, and you'll regret it. Every head turned. From the entrance, a tall man stepped forward, probably early 30s, dark tailored hair, charcoal gray suit, hugging broad shoulders. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the room. The woman froze. Your wife, she asked, confusion cracking her voice. I don't understand. He didn't answer right away. He walked directly toward me, gently placed a hand on my shoulder, steady, protective. I saw everything he said, calm but resolute. You slapped a woman who did nothing wrong just because you thought she didn't matter. I didn't know she was your wife, the woman stammered, her tone faltering for the first time. She's just an employee. She's a person. He interrupted, firm and quiet. And you forgot that. I looked at him, trying to understand who he was, why he'd lie for me. But in that moment, all I knew was this. I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. The air inside the store had thickened as if every word carried weight. The woman who just minutes ago had struck me with arrogant certainty now looked around in desperation, silently begging for someone to take her side. But no one did. All eyes were on the man beside me. You can't throw me out, she said, her voice tightening. You don't own this store. Do you? He smiled, not cruelly, just with quiet confidence. Actually, I own several stores in this mall, he said, steady. And I also have the authority to request mall security, if necessary. Right on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the entrance. Is there a problem here, sir? one asked, glancing at me, my cheeks still red and marked. This woman, he said, nodding toward her, just assaulted my wife. I'd like her escorted from the premises immediately. Ridiculous, she cried. It was just a little gesture. She provoked me. I'm an important person in this city. Don't you know who I am? I stood there, my heart pounding from pain, confusion, disbelief. The man still had his hand on my shoulder, shielding but not possessive. And then he spoke again softly. Do you know who I am? She paused. And then I saw it, the flicker of recognition on her face, followed by fear. Oh my God, she whispered. You're Alexander Wolf. Alexander Wolf. Of course, I had heard the name. Who hadn't? One of the most powerful tech billionaires in the country, known for avoiding the press, living quietly, until now. And now, he was standing next to me. Now you know, he said, still composed. And now, I suggest you leave. The security guards didn't hesitate. Yes, Mr. Wolf, one of them said, nodding as if everything suddenly made sense. We'll escort her out. The woman opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted between the man beside me and the growing number of onlookers now silently recording everything on their phones. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know she tried one last time, but no one was listening anymore. Alexander turned toward me, his voice soft again. Are you all right? I nodded shakily, not because I was okay, but because something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just a shop assistant anymore. I wasn't invisible, and I wasn't alone. As the guards gently guided the woman away, she threw one final glare over her shoulder, but it was no longer the gaze of someone superior, it was someone exposed. And just like that, the hierarchy in the room cracked. Whispers turned into murmurs. Customers approached, asking quietly if I needed water tissues support. A woman placed a hand on my arm and said I saw everything. You didn't deserve that. I didn't know what to say. My world, so carefully kept together with politeness and silence, was now flooded with attention I never asked for. But maybe this time it was the right kind of attention, because someone had finally stood up. For me. I expected Alexander Wolf to leave after that. He didn't. Instead, he stayed while I cleaned up the counter, helped pick up the fallen display cards. When my manager rushed in breathless and pale-faced, Alexander spoke before she could say anything. She was professional, he said calmly. Patient. And graceful under pressure no one should ever have to endure. The manager nodded repeatedly, apologizing to both of us, then discreetly asked if I wanted to take the rest of the day off. I looked at Alexander. I'll walk you out, he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We exited through the side entrance of the mall, away from the phones and the whispers. The air outside was cooler, quieter. You didn't have to do that, I finally said, breaking the silence. He looked at me. You didn't deserve what happened. I couldn't stay silent. But why lie about being my husband? I asked. He smiled gently. Sometimes people only listen when you give them a story they already understand. I didn't reply. I just walked beside him, unsure of where this strange chapter of my life would lead, but knowing something important had just begun. We ended up at a small cafe on the edge of the plaza. I hadn't meant to go anywhere, but when he gestured toward the table, I followed. We didn't talk about the incident, not directly. Instead, he asked me about my favorite books. I told him I hadn't read much lately, life had gotten too loud. He listened. Really listened. And when I finally asked, "Why were you at the mall today?" He said something I'd never expect from a billionaire, trying to remember what it feels like to be normal. That answer lingered between us, soft but weighty. When the coffee arrived, he pushed a card toward me. "If you ever want to start over," he said, "I think I can help." It wasn't a promise of romance. It wasn't even a job offer. Just a key to a door I never knew I could knock on. 3 days later, I submitted my resignation. My manager was stunned. "Lana, please don't. What happened was awful, but we'll protect you now." But it wasn't about protection anymore. It was about agency. I wasn't quitting because I was broken. I was walking away because I'd finally remembered my worth. I didn't call Alexander, but a week later I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter. "Dear Lana," it said, "if you still want to find your voice, we're building something new, something quieter, more human. Your presence would make it better." Attached was an address, not a company, a center. The place wasn't glossy. It wasn't buzzing with press or investors. It was quiet, intentional. The center turned out to be an initiative Alexander had started, something off the grid, a place to train young professionals in empathy-based leadership, communication, presence, poise without pretense. I shadowed their team for a week, then stayed for a month, then led a session. I was no longer invisible. I wasn't a shop girl or a victim. I was Lana. And for the first time in years, that was enough. It's been 6 months. I now help lead a mentorship program under Alexander's foundation. We work with women who've been dismissed, belittled, erased in retail jobs, service industries, and homes. We don't empower them. We just remind them of what they've always had. Some days I still think about that slap, not with pain, but with clarity, because sometimes the things meant to break you become the spark that wakes you. And to the woman who tried to humiliate me, I hope you see now. I didn't need your approval to matter. I just needed to stop asking for it.